Joining me now is the ranking member of the Housing and Urban Affairs Committee, Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio, who we know his Skype setup has been tested because we used it an hour ago with his wonderful wife. Senator, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. Thank you for saying that. Thank you. She was good, too. You were both good on that last half-hour segment. Thank you.
Let me talk to you about a bunch of things, the most serious of which is a number of your colleagues, at least three of them have contracted coronavirus, and we wish them and everybody else in this reporting that we're doing well. But this is affecting the business of the Senate that, by the way, never mind the Supreme Court confirmation that Mitch McConnell is obsessed with, I'm actually worried about this Heroes 2.0 Act. I'm worried about things having to do with coronavirus that people need economic relief from.
Well, we should have passed this months ago. The Senate moved, House and Senate moved together in March, did the right thing, the $600 a week, kept 12 million people out of poverty. Speaker Pelosi in the House then passed the HEROES Act in May. Mitch McConnell said he sees no urgency. He said that week after week, month after month. In August, 600,000 people in my state, just like that, lost their unemployment benefits. What are they to do to stop being, so they're not evicted? What do they do to feed their families? McConnell simply hasn't acted. Pelosi is trying again with a scaled down bill. Still no action from McConnell, still not enough interest from Trump to get something going. We should be passing that. We need to get help to people. There's going to be a huge wave of evictions. There's going to be there's more hunger than there's been in decades. Food banks are seeing people they've never seen before. And Congress and Trump says, stay your own.
Senator, we've got 30 days to go until the election. The consequences of Tuesday's debate are coming into clearer focus. We've got some brand new polling I want to just discuss with you. We announced at the top of the hour. It's NBC News Wall Street Journal polling taken after Tuesday's debate, before President Trump revealed his COVID-19 diagnosis. Look at these numbers, Senator. It shows Joe Biden with a 14-point lead on President Trump, 53-39, which is double almost the 8-point lead that Biden had in the last NBC News Wall Street Journal poll that was taken just before the debate. It's also Biden's largest lead of the race, the previous high being 11 points. Now, we've also got pre-debate NBC News Wall Street Journal polling showing Trump with a 13-point advantage with men 50 years and older. This was before the debate. Post-debate, Joe Biden now has a 1-point lead. So a 14-point swing amongst men 50 and older. That was Trump's sort of golden voting block. What do you make of that?
Well, I make it that Joe Biden in Ohio and elsewhere talks about the dignity of work. Joe Biden is the most pro-worker, pro-union candidate in my lifetime that either party's nominated. And Biden will govern through the eyes of workers. Contrast that with Donald Trump's betrayal of workers. Just like he betrayed the country on the coronavirus, he's betrayed workers, telling Lordstown workers, don't sell your homes. The jobs are coming back before the plant shut down, and we tried to save it. He won't raise the minimum wage. He puts the Secretary of Labor in, who used to be a corporate labor lawyer making millions of dollars suing workers and busting unions. So it's clear Trump is not on the side of working families. That is becoming clear and clear, especially in contrast to a pro-worker candidate like Joe Biden.
Let's talk about, though, I was in your state yesterday. I wasn't able to stay to talk to you there, but I was talking to some people who still get bad information. Wherever they get their information, they believe certain things to be true. And amongst that group, Donald Trump is targeting, whether it's women or suburban men, people who are coming for their jobs, people who are coming for their neighborhoods, people who are coming for their property values. As I was talking to your lovely wife, Cory Booker, he talks about how Cory Booker is going to bring subsidized housing into suburban neighborhoods. Cory Booker tells me he knows nothing about what Donald Trump's talking about. But there is this attempt to try and get to that crowd of people and scare them.
Of course, that's what demagogues do. That's what right-wingers do. They use race, they use division to try to scare people. That's how Trump holds on to his base, the 1/3 or 35 or maybe 40% of voters that respond to that divisive talk. But the voters increasingly are seeing the recklessness and the carelessness of this president. I see it around the Capitol where Republicans often don't wear masks. They bring large numbers of staff people in. I don't have any staff in my own. They're all working from home. But it puts the cafeteria workers and the custodians and the floor staff and the security people at risk. That's what this Republican Party has become. It's the anti-worker party. It's take care of yourself and don't worry about anybody else party. And that's showing up in national polls, and it's showing up in Ohio, and it's why Ohio's going to go with Biden, and we're going to see an electoral college landslide. An electoral college landslide will just will just undermine all of Trump's post-election annex that he thinks he's going to question the election about. And that's the really good news out of that poll and out of what I see happening in Ohio in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Is there anything in that poll that would give pause to Mitch McConnell and Republicans to say that Americans are so strongly in favor of Joe Biden and Democrats at this moment that maybe don't plow ahead with the Supreme Court confirmation? Or do you think it causes them to want to double down because they might lose the Senate?
I think, yeah. Well, you just spoke logic. I think McConnell's logic is the opposite. McConnell knows, as Trump knows, that they're going to lose. And McConnell doesn't want to do anything right now that would help the country, the $600 a week, the putting money into schools so they can open safely, helping people that might be about to be evicted, putting money in local government so there aren't police fire and children's service layoffs. McConnell doesn't want to do that. He wants to put all those problems on the steps of at the feet of the Democrats in January, and he will not let up on the Supreme Court justice. He lives for Mitch McConnell lives for power. He lives for tax cuts, and he lives for young right-wing judges, and that's what he will do. He will put numbers of his own staff and his fellow senators at risk. They continue these weekly lunches. They have these lunches every week of Republican staff. We do ours on the phone as Democrats, and these lunches, they don't care about the food service workers. They don't care about security people, and I'm not sure Mitch McConnell cares a whole lot about some of his colleagues. And so it's full speed ahead for Mitch McConnell, no matter how desperate.
Senator, good to see you. Thank you. I'm glad your Skype setup got a lot of use this morning on my show. Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.